Hi everybody, Dr. Wen here with Originate Health and Wellness, and today we're taking out the trash of 2020. So I got my friend Wally over here who's helped me box it all up and get it filed away. Before we do that, we want to make sure we go through it and kind of get rid of what we didn't need, but also learn from some important lessons from this year. So really what we're looking at is the division this year. It's been on an epic level. So we have the political division, we have race division, we have monetary division happening in our country with the wealth gap kind of growing. And we even have this scientific division with the media kind of portraying something and other scientists around the world saying something differently, and a lot of censorship. So there's just a crazy amount of things happening right now that is really just about dividing us. We're being isolated at home, we're wearing a mask. You know, you get that concept. So what I really want to go over today is what this kind of means. What does this represent? And it really kind of breaks down to how we were conditioned, like how are we experiencing this year, and that all really kind of breaks down to the individual story. So as an example, I want to tell you about a patient who had recently come in and did some NET. And if you're not familiar, there's some other videos I have that describe what NET is, but for today's video, the intent is the purpose is to kind of say it's helping a person reduce stress, but also kind of make sense of how they're feeling about something, because it's actually coming from something from our past that we've not really resolved in a conscious way. So what that kind of means is if you learn something from your parents, but never took that into consideration as being something that you desired for your experience, then you might not be living a life that feels good or feels authentic to the way that you wished to live your experience. And so the story goes like this. Family comes into town and everyone's around and helping out and eating food, and it's all good. But at the same time, there's just piles of dishes happening every night. And so the patient was having stress because they were feeling like the people were taking advantage of them. They weren't assisting around the house, they weren't cleaning up after themselves, and it was falling onto them to do this job. And so they get frustrated and every night cleaning the dishes. And lo and behold, there's more dishes the next morning to deal with, okay? And so that's a very frustrating thing. They were getting very upset about that. And they were kind of blaming the other people who were visiting. Even though that they cared for these people, they were upset and hurt by them. And so we found that it was really that they felt invalidated and that they didn't care about them. And that hurts our feelings, and so we kind of react by being frustrated towards the external environment. And once we cleared that stress event, it broke down to the simple fact of doing the dishes. And the patient reflected that their parent got really upset with the way that they were doing the dishes or the way that they cleaned their room, because they wanted it done in a very particular way. And the patient, having a more abstract, artistic kind of mindset, wanted to do it their way. And there was a clash here, okay? And due to that clash and the parent putting their ideals and the way to do something and being frustrated with the way that the patient had been experiencing or doing their cleaning and what have you, it kind of made the patient feel like they were failing, like they were bad in some way, full of shame and these kinds of emotions. And it's, you know, something as silly as like how you pick up your clothes or how you put the dishes in the dishwasher. And so currently, if the dishes aren't put away in that same regard, then there's a feeling like it's wrong. And that's an irrational feeling, okay? Because, you know, as long as the dishes are clean, what's it matter how they're put in there? But it's how we feel about it that causes us stress and therefore affects our health. And that's kind of the important thing to take away from this. So once we cleared out that feeling and that emotion, we recognized that the patient was reflecting that these were stupid ideas. And that struck me. So I asked, you know, why do you think that that's stupid? Well, it's stupid that I feel this way still, because that's a dumb thing. I was like, no, it's not dumb. It's a real feeling. As a child, you felt hurt and shame because you weren't doing it right. And And today, when these events were going on, it was triggering this feeling. And therefore, we use anger and frustration to not necessarily deflect, but to protect ourselves from feeling things like shame and being vulnerable, to being hurt, to being not cared for. And so it's a completely normal thing. It's not that she was lacking any kind of intelligence or common sense. She was a child when she felt these feelings, and the event right now is just triggering those memories, okay? So that's why it's important to go back through our experiences and kind of say, well, what did I learn from that? And those feelings that I had about it, were they valid, or was it based on something else, okay? So that's the main goal for today. So in retrospect to this year, we've been just having a whole bunch of division, okay? And what that really is amounting to is inability to trust others, that they have intelligence, right? That they have common sense, that they have our interest in mind. We've been conditioned this year to think that a mask isn't necessarily going to protect me, but it's going to protect you. And so for my behavior isn't necessarily about me, it's about others. And this is a great concept to give, but it really invalidates our feelings, doesn't it? And so when we invalidate our own feelings, then we don't necessarily live in alignment or in authenticity with our desires. And then we think, the concept of the ego or having desires of our own are somehow bad. And that's untrue, because ultimately what we're trying to get through with this video is how important and how valuable you are. The world would not be the world without you in it, because you experience the world as you see it, and nothing else exists without you. So let that sink in for a second. The reason you see the world you do is because of you, and that wouldn't exist without you, right? It seems kind of circular conversation there, but that's kind of the breadth of what we're wanting to portray today. And that ultimately fulfillment isn't necessarily a gift that you get from Santa Claus, but it's something that you build within yourselves, okay? And what we want to do is kind of teach and support you in feeling more fulfilled. And this comes from a healthy lifestyle, okay? So hydration, why is that important? Because if we're not drinking enough water, then the tissues can't move nutrients in and out, but they can't also get rid of waste. This is important for detoxification, for things like bowel function, for headaches, for congestion in our lymphatic system. So if we're missing hydration, we're not going to clear very well. And then nutrients, obviously eating a healthy diet, cutting out processed food, sugars, and these kinds of things are going to support your body in maintaining the ability to recover from the work that you're wanting to do. And then you have movement. Without movement of the body, then we don't get optimal stimulation to our brain, okay? And if we're not getting that optimal stimulation to our brain, we're having an impact to how we feel about our environment. We're having increases in stress, we're having increases in pain and inflammation, and that's affecting things like concentration, focus, as well as depression and anxiety and these kinds of things. So it's a full circle approach to really getting people back to being healthy. Awesome. So now let's talk about the concept of Pavlovs dogs, okay? This is where a study was done where they were feeding dogs and they would ring a bell. And they would feed the dog and they would ring the bell. And they'd feed the dog and they'd ring the bell. And then eventually they would ring the bell and the dog would salivate because it was expecting food to come with it. There was this expectation, okay? And just like the family dynamic from before, when there's an unconscious agreement, right? The family who was visiting from out of town had an expectation that the host would clean up after them by doing the dishes. And so that expectation or conditioned reaction brought stress into the environment. And oftentimes when we have these emotions running in the background, they're essentially like programs on your phone. if you don't shut them down, they'll start eating away at the energy available to the battery, and then you're going to have less available energy or bandwidth to make sense of your environment, okay? And so emotions and these other things that are basically experiences we've had from this year, if we don't go back and reconcile those and close out those programs, we're essentially using or throwing away available energy for our body to do work. And that could be to think and concentrate, that could be to make love to your spouse, that could be to educate and be present with your children, to being out in the world and having patience while waiting in line for the grocery store, to sitting in traffic and feeling safe when you're out in the world. One of the ideas that we want to bring out to this right now is organization, okay? And when it comes to organization for next year, there's a desire that you have. And that desire could be, I want to have $1 million. And so if you want to have $1 million, it's like, well, based on what you do to generate income for yourself, what is necessary to do? And so let's just use a concept here, an arbitrary, 5 steps, let's say. There's 5 steps to, get to earning that desired goal. And, it's exciting, it's something you want, right? But maybe there's some emotions or some conditions, some programs in the background that are saying, you don't deserve it. You're not good enough. Nobody would want that for you. Nobody's going to pay you that money. These kinds of things. And when that's going on in the background, sometimes we don't even take that first step to getting our end goal or desire, okay? But if you have the courage and the strength and the resources and the energy to start that process of whatever your end goal or objective is, then you can overcome that stop or block, and you can move into your process, these 5 steps. So let's say you get to step 1, you did what you needed to do, you're moving on, you get to step 2, and there's a block. You actually don't know how to do step 2. So then we got to figure out what to do. So in that process, we have to break it down again into a couple more steps. Now, we can go back and feel all these emotional blocks again, dang it, I can't do it now, I don't know how to do this thing, and I guess it's not meant to be. Or we can kind of learn how to do that. And so you got to figure out first that I don't know how to do it, and then second, who does? Where do I learn this process? And what's interesting about that is then you have all these other emotions again about trusting. Is this resource accurate or valid? Can I trust this person to help me? Can I trust this system to support me? Do I have enough money or resources to pay for that? So these are things that can also be a block to us. And so once we kind of overcome those blocks and obstacles, then we can finally achieve how to do step 2. And then we got to go through the process of implementing that which we learned. So now we got step 2 done. Great, we're cruising along. Now we get to step 3. We know how to do that. We start going through that process. Awesome. Now we get to step 4. We crash again. There's another step we don't know. And if we don't know that we don't know, then we get kind of blocked. We get stopped. And sometimes that's enough to block the momentum from moving forward. So then we have to go through that same process of dealing with these emotions, these blocks, that can stop us from moving forward. And that's where NET can really be helpful, is to help a person, not necessarily in talk therapy kind of sense, but to recognize that there is even a block here, and that we can use the body to express where that block is coming from, but also to kind of visit the past event or belief, conditioned response or worldview, and kind of make sense of that in our new reflective conscious way. And by doing that, guess what? Now we have the ability to do step 4. And so once we recognize that we can do it, then we got to figure out how to do it again. And then we got to go through that process of trusting those new ways of doing it. And then we have to implement that new way of doing it. And then we have to generate the time, energy, and resources to do it. So perfect, now we get step 4 done, we get to step 5, we're like, sweet, we're done. We finally reached our desired goal. However, sometimes when you get there, you're actually not satisfied. Or maybe it's not really what you want anymore. Or maybe you still don't feel fulfilled in some way. And so it goes back to the concept that fulfillment comes from within ourselves. So before we even step into a process of going after what we desire, you can kind of reflect to it as your New Year's resolutions. If there's something that you would want to achieve, you got to go through these 5 steps, and along the way there may be some blocks that that are unknown to you. And sometimes there's ways, there's even things that you don't even know that you don't know. And so that's why it's important to work with somebody at supporting you in getting these goals met. And also to recognize that you can be fulfilled even without the need to have it. Because oftentimes we feel like we need to have this desired outcome in order to be fulfilled. And so if you start by becoming fulfilled, and then it oftentimes becomes much easier to get that end desired goal. So I just want to end this video with a reminder and a response that the world wouldn't be the same without you. And we're happy you're here. We wish you a happy new year, and that tomorrow is going to be no different than today unless we choose something differently. Choose wisely. Happy New Year. We'll see you on the other side.